What's good? What's good? What's good? I am Damo, the political plug. This is the Chop Up Show. Excuse me, y'all. I
Right.
am. Yeah, I'm getting it up right now. I'm here. I'm here with my dog. I know who I'm always rocking with, Toya G. And I know it's kind of confusing. It's like, oh my God, it's a Tuesday and they here. Like, what's going on? What's happening? What's going on is Damo will be traveling. Yes, I referred to myself in third person. I'll be traveling this week. My oldest nephew is graduating from high school, so I'll be moving around this week to do that. But it's no way I can be, you know what I'm saying, going throughout the week without getting it in, having this chop up conversation with y'all, especially because of the conversation we're having and the importance of it. What's good with you, Toya?
What's going on? Yeah, I'm feeling good. I don't know. I'm having some type of allergy thing. So if y'all see me over here cutting up sneezing, just know I've done that about 50 times in the last 2 hours or so, maybe more. So I'm fighting to hold on. But it's Gemini season. Shout out to all my twins out there. It was good. It's our time. Welcome. It's we love it. It's Gemini
Ain't
season.
y'all crazy? Geminis are crazy, right? Y'all the ones that got the two different
Hey, you know what you should do?
sides.
You should grow
Yeah.
up. You should grow up. You should read a little bit. You should know better.
Yeah.
But more importantly, you should refuse to fall into those silly stereotypes that really do nothing but flatten the very interesting and deep contours of the average Gemini. Do better.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I heard that. But anyway, getting into the conversation. Shout out to the Geminis. Shout out to the Geminis. If
Shout
Toya a
out to
Gemini.
again the ancestors was good in the chat. If you are in the building, make sure you use your manners and say what's good. We're about to get into some conversations today, and hopefully y'all be a part of it. But go ahead if you're on YouTube and say what's up real quick. Let us know you in the building.
Let us know that you in the building. So today, the dialogue that we having is it's a political chop. It's a political chop up today. But it's a much needed conversation because I don't know if y'all paying attention, but we pretty much are in the throes of election season. You know what I'm
It's
saying?
time.
Like
It's already
folks,
time.
yeah, it's halfway through 2023. We getting new challengers to Donald Trump. Tim Scott, black conservative, recently put his name in the hat. I'm gonna clown him. You know what I'm saying, later this week uh, on everything about his announcement.
I also heard, even though this person hasn't made it official, but Daniel Cameron, who you know is over the uh, investigation of Breonna Taylor, he is the the Attorney General of the state of Kentucky, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
He
Mm-hmm.
was also speculated to be running again, so he's not even going to be Tim Scott. Ain't even going to be possibly, or more likely than not, the only black conservative running. You know, they don't play when they bring those Ben Carson, Herman Cain to pop up on you. We had people in the past, and so they'll put you a couple of them out there, but now we're
Yeah,
gonna have choice. They're gonna
they'll
do
put
it at the
they'll
same
put
time. So you can just choose.
yeah, and even with like Ben Carson and them was like celebrities and other stuff that just so happened to run for president, right? Like
True.
Herman Cain was a pizza mogul. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, but now with Tim Scott and these individuals, these are certified black Republicans that's been a part of different Republican caucuses and all that. And so it's getting it started, right? We're hearing that Ron DeSantis is gonna be running soon, whatever. All of these names, y'all don't really give a damn about. Right? And
Right,
if we
right, right,
being
right.
honest, right? But as much as I know that y'all don't give a damn about these names, these people, and a lot of what they stand for, I know y'all like to talk politics though. With no if y'all like to talk politics. Y'all
Yeah.
like to have a conversation. You know what I'm saying? Y'all like to tap in. Toya, correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't. I think it's true. We call you the political plug here affectionately for a reason, and that's because I think there's a connection that you and we make to folks who want to have the conversations about what they see playing out in front of them. And so, yeah, this is a place where we talk that talk.
Okay, so with that being said, um, everybody like to run their mouth about politics, but the problem is it always is a part of a script. It's always a part of what I like to call and what we refer to routinely here at the Chop Up political theater. It's not
Absolutely.
real. It's not real. It's a show, right? What you
You, you
see?
know,
Go ahead.
well, no, it makes me think, and I think because we're sports fans as well, that is very interesting that a lot of the bigger kind of parts of our society where there are competing interests and
Mm.
competing and dueling perspectives and orientation, whether it be in sport or whether it be in political theater, or whether it be in terms of just some of the social issues of our time that people have conspiracies about. I feel like there is what I'm calling script theory. And it makes me wonder, just from an educator's perspective, like who, if anybody, is writing about the ways that us as humans cope with change,
Mm.
particularly between power, whether it be power on a field or on a court or in politics, because there is always this speculation that somebody's scripting this shit, right? That
Yeah.
there is a careful and intentional orchestration of the way this shit is playing out. And it is up to us. It's kind of like a game. It's like a video game where it's curated and designed to get you to a certain endpoint, but it's like you see people along the way. Do you stop and talk to this character? Do you
Right.
go and like, you know what I'm saying? I think it has a lot of different options and appendages to it, but script theory, which is specifically what you're talking about in terms of how we are seeing things play out very episodically, very formulaically, right? Following a schedule or a playbook or a formula that we can predict and see the pieces of. It's just always fascinating because I think that is how us as people try to rationalize and make sense of bullshit most of the time. But that's just my wheel spinning.
No,
Go back to what you were saying in terms of political theory and
but
how
the
shit's playing.
no, I mean, but I think the point that you make is important. Is because it's how we rationalize it, how we make it make sense for us. The
Mm-hmm.
problem is we go with the simple shit. Right, we go with the thing that we can easily attach ourselves to. Like we talked about podcasts and trash TV a few days ago, but but a part of the reason why people are drawn to trash TV is because it's like comfort food. Comfort food is usually not good for you, right? It just makes you feel good, right? What's
Right.
the term I use to it? Empty calories.
Right.
It's a lot you take in, but it's not of real substance, right? And so what has frustrated me, and part of the reason why I became the political plug in the first place is and study politics, is just when I'm hearing black people talk politics, it's always the same thing. It's the same rhetoric. It's the same script, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a script to a terrible TV show,
Very
right?
true.
Terrible. Shouldn't be picked up at all, but for whatever reason, people love it. It's like Jersey Shore, right? Like no, it's no real script. It's a
Yeah.
script, but the script is just like a concept. Like everybody just kind of follows. Like it looks like this, right? Like if you watch reality shows on VH1 or on Bravo, my wife loves them. You feel me? It's
Yeah.
we go to lunch together. We go to lunch with people we don't like, and then we end up throwing drinks at each other. That's the
Yeah.
script. You know what I mean? It's not written down, but it's just kind of like that when we go to this lunch or when they come back from commercial and go to this lunch on this reality TV show,
It's the chance
these
that
women about
they're gonna fly.
right some
I
drinks is gonna be
probably
flying, right? Same thing the way we think about and have political dialogue. So what I'm gonna do today, and just like a lot of the conversations we have on the chop up, is these are the conversations that you're going to hear us have in the future, but pertaining to different aspects of kind of what we're talking about. But the things that I want to make sure that we ain't doing going into this election season, this is what I want to start with. Like beginning election season, this is the shit we need to leave alone. We not doing this. We not doing this. And unfortunately, to get this conversation started, we gotta we gotta start with kind of coming at a legend in the game. Now, I don't really like doing like celebrity conversation. I don't really like bringing celebrities because you never know who you gonna meet in the future. You feel me? And Ice Cube is somebody that I have a lot of respect for. Ice Cube kind of shaped how I understood the word nigga uniquely. You know what I mean? And what we understand conscious music to sound like, right? He was like a gangster rapper that kind of made conscious music a little bit. You feel me? So you
Mhm.
can never take away from the legacy of Ice Cube. But unfortunately, what's been going on recently is the dialogue that Ice Cube is engaging in. Shout out to Chris MVP Harris if he's still in the chat. But the dialogue that Ice Cube has been mainly a part of as of the more recent elections it's left a lot to be desired. You know what I mean? Somebody who back in the day we definitely felt like was ahead of the curve has now reached a point to where we like I don't know if we should be, you know what I mean, to that. So
Yeah.
let's go ahead. I'm a play where Ice Cube is to a recent statement that Ice Cube made on a podcast that kind of re-sparked some of the controversy from things that he's actually done and said in the past. And so this is gonna help us kind of understand as we go into this election season We not doing this. We are not doing this. Now, Toya, what was your thoughts on Cube and the comments he made back then?
I think that my problem with him, one of many, outside of like packaging, delivery, as a communication scholar, we care about those things. You just not really are getting people out on your side a whole lot. But some of the biggest issues I had was that he it has been very, and I mean, I think even this week he has retweeted or started to tweet again about how black people need to abandon the Democratic Party. The problem with that is we exist in a two-party system. So by nature, when you talk about how it is that we should undermine the Democratic Party, then that automatically means that you are presupposing that then we should look to the Republican Party for some type of fortress or help. You even double down on those things by your behaviors and how you brought and presented and talked about your plans with the Republican Party over the Democratic Party. And we can go back and forth about some of the reasons why he did what he did. He was questioned a whole lot about why he didn't really bring his plan to the Biden administration or to sit down and with Kamala,
So
with
just
Vice President
because you
Harris when he was invited to talk to her and a bunch of different things like that. But I think the worst parts about what Ice Cube is doing is that he is so laser focused on being critical of Democrats and Democratic politics and the way that they've undermined black communities is that he's pushing black people toward Republican politics that have no likely interest or value in his mind. But he wants to kind of celebrate it as whoever's giving me the airtime. The thing about that is, and we'll get into some of these things, but it's just like just because people are giving you the time of day and giving you a capacity and platform doesn't mean they're not tokenizing you and using you as an example of the ways that black people are really on the side of the conservatives when their agenda don't speak to anything that's in our needs. But
Right.
we'll get into that more. Let's go ahead and look at this clip of what Cube has recently said about politics.
So this is Cube recently. Let's get it.
so just because you might not agree, or you could be, so-called hate or mad or whatever, but you have to dialogue. If not,
So Toya,
what's the next step?
so I first want to point out this like this ain't on the list. We're probably gonna talk about this on down the line, but this whole notion of like we just disagree, like that. This isn't a question of just like simple disagreement, Q. Like when we looking at the dangers and the policies, which we're gonna discuss when it comes to Republicans, this is already this is already how we have to kind of come to understand how like yo, you getting a lot of this wrong, bro. It's a lot that you already don't understand. But let's let him finish though. Let's hear him out completely.
You think there's like a stigma amongst like the African American community to like Republicans and stuff like that?
I don't know what's going on in the African American community when it comes to that. You know what I mean? Like, black people have supported Democrats, overwhelmingly for
Mm-hmm.
50, 60 years. And nothing has changed. So something's got to change.
Yeah.
So the first thing I want to point out wrong with his response, because if y'all didn't hear, the interviewer asked, "Do you think that that the black community pretty much has a bias or feel a way about conservatives?" For Cube to say he don't know what's going on with that, you don't know why black people ain't really rocking with conservatives like that.
Come on now.
Like for whatever reason, for you to be involved in political dialogue, bro, you can't understand why. Like you don't understand. You not hip to what's going on. You feel me? But what I want to focus on for today though, because that's for another conversation. But what I want to focus on for today is the whole end part, right? The Democrats, 50, 60 years, they ain't did nothing for black people. Newsflash, people. Our government as a whole has failed black people. It has been a collaborative effort. Right? This is not just that, this one group, but if the other one was, it don't work like that. In unison, they have been counterproductive. You are a damn fool if you believe that Democrats not doing anything for black people deserves more conversation than Republicans are actively working to undermine rights, opportunity, and access for black people. You out of your mind.
completely ignoring the fact that over the last 50 or 60 years, there's not like there's been one singular party in control that Democrats have consistently shown up for. I'm sorry, black people have consistently shown up and voted for. No, there have been Republicans who have had their turn, have their chance in the chair to really equalize things, to show that they're not the party that their reputation has preceded them as. And they've done literally none of those things. George W. Bush got 2 terms back to back, 8 whole years, and all he did was look at Louisiana and give a big middle finger up, not a big thumbs up, but a big middle finger up, 2 of them, to that entire state at a time of calamity. Right? When you look at Donald Trump and what he's done and the types of protections that they make. A lot of people want to argue that he was the best president for black people and this and that, but no, there is actually information to the contrary, so much so that he's not even in office, but a lot of the ideologies that he has allowed to exist are wreaking havoc on the presence of black people and their roles politically, socially, in DEI spaces, in classroom spaces around this country. So his impact is still reverberating. He not only did he not do anything for black people, he did a lot of things for black people.
Yeah.
And now there's a bunch of Mr. Me Too's and a bunch of mini me's walking around thinking they him, who are, just causing calamity from sea to shining sea in a lot of different ways. If it's not education, it's with trans rights. If it's not with trans rights, it's with LGBTQ rights. If it's not with LGBTQ rights, it's with CRT and, talking about black people and their history and talking about indigenous folks. If it's not that, then of course it's Florida where immigration rights are being all types of fucked up. And now, Latinx people don't have places to work or jobs to do. Can't even drive in a car with a person who is expected to be an immigrant, or you're going to go to jail and that's federal charges. Can't keep them in your house or they're going to take you to jail on federal charges. So they targeting the same voter base that voted for them 3 years ago, right? Like, who planted those seeds, by the way? Donald J. Trump.
Trump. And
when you start acting all weird, like Republicans are doing something special or jazzy, that's where you lose me. Like, I get it. Let's not be beholden to what Democrats have done, but stop that with the other side of it.
Yeah, like you got to stop that, right? Primarily because as we speak, 44 states with conservative-driven legislators have introduced legislation geared at banning critical race theory and wokeness. 44 states. That's most of the union, people. It's only, how many states is it?
50 of them, and then Guam and Puerto Rico.
50 of them. 44 of them have introduced legislation to geared at banning CRT and wokeness. But here's the kicker. Since most of the opponents of those two concepts can't clearly articulate a sentence describing what they are, it is safe to say that they are really just banning black history and banning calling out racism. That's it. So, again, when you come to me with that, but what have Democrats done bullshit, you deserve to be shunned. You deserve to be booed. That is not relevant conversation for intelligent black political dialogue.
Not at all.
Period. It should be ignored in intelligent black political dialogue. We ain't doing it in 2023. If you pop up with the I'm not taking you serious. We are no longer having respectful conversation moving forward with that type of with that type of approach.
And I want to make sure that when we right before you move to your next point, just that when we talk about celebrities, we don't just want to pick on Q because he wasn't the only one, right? Dr. Luke was out there making weird ass, statements and really stating his opinion on shit that it just was not moving or mobilizing the conversation. And I think a lot of people started in different ways and I think through the pandemic and a lot of other social issues, you start to see these celebrities that start speaking out of turn. And it's a fine line because we're not saying just stay in the booth or just play your instrument or just, play your sport of choice. But it's a lot of people having these conversations around you that, would be more helpful if you jump behind them and get all of our support and stuff like that and the visibility that you have in your platform to get it to them because they've been doing the work longer and more strategically in ways that make more sense. So it's just, to celebrities, bro, just use your power wisely. Use your influence wisely. Quit taking up space and wasting time when you could really be clicking and doing some stuff because we don't believe you. When you talk, we do not believe you.
And I also think that that's actually perfectly leads us into our next point. The second thing that we're not doing in 2024, we're getting it started in the beginning of this election season. We are no longer being lectured to and giving advice to about voting and elections from celebrities. It's not happening. Like and again, we're not picking on Q, but we want to use him as an example. Like before we get into this nonsense and it kind of start the same way and go the same way it always go, right? Because the reason why you have a script is so it goes the way that it always goes, right?
Exactly.
So we are using examples of his, but again, we're not picking on Cube, right? But this is where Cube lapsed. This was a shortcoming of his in this understanding to where when we're like literally having this conversation is more so a learning opportunity. It's a learning opportunity for us and Q, right? Well, I mean, not for me because I'm and you and I told you we doing the teaching, but for us, for y'all and for Cube, it's a learning opportunity for why why we need to reapproach 2024 in different ways than we've done in 2020, 2016, and etc. Let's line this up real quick.
Reach out to people. Did you connect with the Congressional Black Caucus at all? Because they reached out. They reached out after they saw what happened yesterday. They reached out to me, and they sent me this. They sent me. Go to my iPad, guys. Come on. Platinum Plan versus.
See anything.
Okay. No. Right. No. I was talking to the control room. Right. I'm gonna read it to you. Platinum Plan versus Contract with Black America versus CBC legislation. You call for your CBWA calls for ending qualified immunity, banning chokeholds, and elimination of no-knock warrants. The CBC says all of that is included in the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, but it hasn't been enacted by the folks there in Congress. I mentioned Juneteenth, the federal holiday. The same thing about anti-lynching law. Your CW.
So this was so what they talking about is back in 2020. Cube introduced his what he called I guess the CBC. You know what I'm saying? And it was I mean he referred to it as an economic plan, but if you read through it, it was really just like, to be honest, like some pretty common sense suggestions. You know what I mean? That like things that have already kind of been what's being pointed out here, or it was the CBWA, the Congressional Black Caucus. At this point, is telling Cube like, "Hey, bro, we've actually already introduced these things."
We got you, man.
Right? Like these are things that we've already kind of put into place. So what it is that you're asking for, right? While you talking about like don't rock with Democrats and everything else, what you asking for, we already doing in a way, right? And so what we listen, and so what we playing here is this is Q's response to really being told, bro, like we doing this. So let's continue.
Right.
Your contract calls for baby bonds of $1,000 for all new babies. The CBC says that's in their CBC's Jobs and Justice Act. You proposed a plan for neo-reconstruction. The CBC said we gave President Trump a 125-page detailed plan to do this in 2017. 4 years later, we've seen nothing. And according to the CBC, and I want you to respond to this here, according to the CBC, you propose a one-time interest-free home loan for qualified Black Americans. The CBC says, quote, this plan only addresses access to a loan for certain Black people. It does not address necessary relief provisions to prevent foreclosures and expand forbearance for homeowners. But the CBC Jobs and Justice Act does. And so what the Congressional Black Caucus says is the things that you're saying that these things have not been done, have not been focused on, they say, it has been done. It's literally in our bills. They were passed by the House, but ignored by the Senate. The Black Census Project that Alicia was working on, they dropped in 2019. She's saying they have been working on those things. And so just your response to that was, especially with the CBC saying, no, it's actually in our bills that have been passed. But they were passed by the House, but ignored by the Senate.
My thing is keep up the good work. Keep going at it. We got to get it passed.
Think about that, people.
Yeah. Keep up the good work, you said.
Let's be clear here. Q came out saying Democrats ain't been doing nothing. I'm putting out this plan. Black Democrats respond by saying, yo, we've actually been introducing this stuff. And the conservatives that you sitting down talking with have ignored it and actually made sure that it didn't get over into the Senate where it could actually become legislation. His response isn't to be like, okay, Well, maybe I'm going to retract my criticism about not anything changing, right? Let me retract my criticism of the way things have been operating now and develop a better understanding about what y'all doing currently. No, that wasn't that wasn't the script tells you we'll keep up the good work. Cube, if we go with your narrative, they're not doing no good work.
Exactly, man. I think, I think it's admirable for these cultural leaders, for these celebrities, for these kind of, advocates of Black community because they benefit the most from Black community. I think it's great that they are trying to use their power intelligently. I think though that they have to be, you got to be with the evolution of the game, right? The stakes are higher because the way Republicans have had all the power they have and Black people have not seen the benefits of different decision making, that it's not happening at the top level of politics anymore. It's happening at the level of legislation of the House and of the Senate. So you got to know how government works in order to be able to really get in there and finagle and get behind certain candidates, right? This is why, for example, Killer Mike gets a lot of attention during these midterm elections, right? And that is because
still getting a lot of attention too. He's still on that same nonsense. He's still on it.
Exactly, because he attaches himself to local races in his particular area of the community because he knows he's around a bunch of Black people that represent a particular voting block, and he wants to be a part of the action, not just when presidential races come around, but all up in the middle in the juicy parts where it really does matter. And so he is keenly, albeit we don't always agree with his perspective and his approaches to it, but he's always there in the mix. People have had to ask the question, who the hell elected Killer Mike, the voter and the representative of Black people? I've been beating his chest real hard about what he think niggas need. And
he getting a lot wrong. He getting a lot wrong.
But at the same time, he's in the mix, in the right conversations. He just happens to be saying some of the wrong things. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like that's what's missing is from Cube's dynamic that makes him not persuasive to people who really know how politics works, is that my nigga, like, it's already people you should be jumping behind, who are having these conversations. And you an international recording artist. You can go state to state and encourage and rally up different people to connect to certain people who represent the politics that you want. But that demands that you put an extra link in the chain of your work. That means you can't just jump on Twitter, jump on Instagram, cut on live and just start saying shit. You have to be knowledgeable about the independent and small cracks and crevices of how politics are happening on a more cultural level. And that's harder work than just being like, man, y'all want to elect the same ass president. In a lot of ways, the president does not matter because it doesn't matter what party the president is. If there is no continuity in the House and in the Senate, who gives a shit who's at the top? It's right now.
That is correct. That is correct. And it's also important to know when we talk about doing the work, right? Doing the work ain't just like philanthropy, because we know with the nonprofit industrial complex, all philanthropy really comes back to you anyway. So it's not really like philanthropy in the United States, where money is not very altruistic because you get that money back, right? In what you don't have to pay in taxes. You feel me? So the issue is that when we talk about doing the work to celebrities, we're talking about reading, research, right? Like really being tapped into the community and the demands of the community. Remember, the first clip we played is when he was like, well, I don't know what's going on with the Black community and Republicans. Then why are you speaking on our relationship with Democrats? Right? That means that your political education is incomplete.
Yeah.
And so we as the people got to put it, if like, listen, I already think we hold celebrities to a ridiculous standard, a much too high standard. But if that's what we're going to do, if we're going to hold them to that standard, let's also make sure that standard comes with something that's beneficial for us. So that means like reflecting policies and education and information that's beneficial to us. Not just repeating and regurgitating the same old talking points that you didn't picked up from somebody else that you didn't listen to. That's not an original thought on your own. And we know that people like Cube are extremely creative. His original thoughts in a lot of ways have shaped a lot of what we grew up on. Right? Friday, you know what I'm saying? And a bunch of other movies and music that like stem from him. But then all of a sudden, right?
Friday, Players Club. What else we got? Are we there yet?
Cube is a creative genius.
Anaconda, like just all types of beautiful things. I just wanted to give a shout out to the projects that I did appreciate, and he sounds like my brother. It's really weird.
I mean, but that's what I'm saying. We respect Cube. We got love for Cube. But if you gonna get into this arena, you gotta do the work. Like you don't want like Cube as much as he is involved with when it comes to music and when it comes to movies, you know what it's like when somebody come into your arena not knowing what the hell they talking about. Like, you know what that's like. And so that's why we need to put the onus on our celebrities, the people that we respect, the people that have our hearts, minds, and spirits, right? Because of their art. We got to put it on them to be like, if you jumping over into this into this pool, make sure you fully equipped.
I mean, but you know, in the same ways, we got to realize and recognize too, in the same ways we criticize, you know, politicians for being detached from real life and how real shit goes. To a certain extent, these celebrities are detached from the real needs and the real conversations of what's happening in the hood too, bro. When you have a certain level of conversations, yeah, you double back, yeah, you stay connected, but you often have a perspective of how the hood is working and how politics are moving and how conversations are happening on a day-to-day, like, nigga level from when you live that life. But these things are constantly changing. There's constantly kind of hands in the turn in the winding chain moving things along that you missing out on. It's a whole lot of celebrities. You know, the same way you ask, you know, Donald Trump, I think, got asked about how much a carton of milk costs or something like that, and said something ridiculous back when he was president. It's the same way you'll ask some of these fools how much is eggs, how much is milk, how much is toilet paper, how much is gas. They don't got a good answer for you about that shit either, right? So they are attempting to use their powers for good instead of evil, which again is commendable, but it ends up cycling through and doing some of the same most problematic things, which means when it's all said and done, you undermine the political capital. This is another debate term or phrase that I want to make sure we're familiar with. Political capital means the kind of value you have and
influence you can peddle.
Influence you can have in certain spaces, right? You only get a finite amount of political capital before people start taking you serious. So when, you know, Ice Cube makes space for himself and pulls up to the mic like, I got some shit to say, cool. But you start burning the political capital that entertainers and black leaders, you know, from kind of cultural perspectives have when you elbow your way into the conversation and they really talk about shit. Because it's like, now here goes one of these rappers thinking they know everything, right? And that makes it 10 times harder to bridge the gap between people who are out here singing songs and telling stories and creating the imagery for a lot of black folks' lived realities, and those people pushing the buttons, making the decisions who are even that much more further away from them. You don't do anything to bridge that gap, my nigga. You make it further. You make it brighter, and now you got all of them saying, we got it. You can take it from here. No, have a seat. That's what you create.
So the last one before we get into this the next part of this political chop tonight is one that we kind of briefly touched on, but I want to make sure we understand what's going on. So for the second one, what we're not doing in 2024, we are not being lectured, taught, or anything from celebrities on this political shit, especially if they have not shown or displayed a level of understanding that is productive for the dialogue. Period. It's not happening. We're not doing it. But going into this last one is it's really, I won't say, I mean, I'll say it's just as important as the others, but it is also the more strategic understanding and the more strategic aspect of it, right? This is one that like again, like I said, Toya touched on. I touched on it a little bit. But we really about to get a full understanding of what goes wrong here. Let me get this pulled up. Give me just a second.
Real quick, y'all, too, if you aren't connected to the Instagram page, go and do that right now at the Chop Up Show. Make sure you're staying connected. If you're not following the political plug, you should also on that platform and on TikTok. A lot of action going up on TikTok for the plug, so make sure you get connected with that at the political plug. And now we're ready to listen to the clip. Let's go ahead and take it back and run it out.
Yeah, no, that ain't the right one. The one I'm trying to play for you is not playing.
Which one we talking about?
We talking about, so what I'm about to play here is about local. This is the conversation that people have about local elections that is extremely problematic, not beneficial at all. Let's get it.
Black people in America that voted for Biden, are you paying attention? He opened up the borders. Now they raising the rent all of a sudden. They raising the rent everywhere. And some places where you was not charged for water, now you're charged for water. And some places where you wasn't charged for the trash tax, now you're being charged for that. They're low-key buying us out, man. They're low-key buying us out, man. Or they call that gentrification. But I don't, well.
All right, so what this brother's complaining about, he's complaining about rent. He's complaining about trash tax, right? He's complaining about water, his water bill. Rent, trash tax, and water bill. And if y'all look at the title of the video, attention blacks who voted for Biden. Again, let me articulate what he's mad about when we talking about Biden. Rent being too high.
Yeah.
Trash, your trash bill being too high, and your water bill being too high. My God. None of that got shit to do with Biden. So y'all know what we not doing this year? We are not obsessing over presidential elections, specifically over things that ain't got shit to do with the presidential election. And again, there are things that trickle down from federal politics to, you know what I'm saying, to us in our localities, but the direct impact, especially if you're complaining about water, you complaining about your water bill, that's directly tied to your local officials. Obsessing over presidential election while dismissing and ain't not having nothing to say over local issues, we done with. We not doing it. If you want to talk about crime and punishment, that's a local issue. Schools and education, that's a local issue. I ain't trying to hear nothing about 90s crime bills if you cannot give me the name of your district attorney. If you do not know who prosecuting people in your community, who is an elected official, don't talk to me about what Biden did in the 90s, especially if you don't know that 95% of elected prosecutors are overwhelmingly white.
Yeah.
You're complaining about Joe Biden, but 95% of elected prosecutors, 95% of the people locking black people up in this country don't look like us. So we got to change that first. Then even for liberals, right? Even for progressives, when we got an issue with what they doing with CRT, over 70% of school board officials are white.
Yeah.
Let me repeat, over 70% of school board officials are white. Does this mean that all white prosecutors or white school board officials are automatically going to do things that are detrimental to black communities? No, not automatic. But how they're socialized, they are more likely to lean towards politics that are detrimental to black communities. So when they occupy these spaces, overwhelmingly elected spaces, might I add, yeah. And we're obsessed over what's going on with Joe Biden, right? I know a lot of people don't know them statistics. I get it. But that's why we got to dismiss the script. Yeah. That's why we can't. Biden, Trump, DeSantis, Tim Scott. If you complaining about your water bill, but they can't do nothing for you, bro. Yeah. You are working backwards, complaining about Joe Biden for something that Biden can't do nothing for. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, to you.
Sure.
Like,
I mean, you're not wrong. Oh, I thought you were about to say something specific. You've not lied.
No, yeah.
You've not been incorrect or inaccurate yet. And I think, I don't think it can be overstated that, we get excited and all geared up about these bigger elections. We pay all attention to these bigger conversations about these candidates. And if your city or local municipality is anything like mine, they send home material to give you a quick little overview of each candidate, to tell you a little bit about everybody's running and their issues or whatever. Those little leaflets that end up in your mail and kill all the damn trees and that I hate because I feel like they're bad for the fucking environment and I hate them every election cycle. Crack a couple of them open and see what they say and see what these people are trying to run for. That way, when you get to that part of the vote and you in the voting booth and you just start clicking random shit, right? You can stop doing that and have a better idea about these people who are on a more local level on a state level doing some work. I mean, honestly, we already know if it's worth having, you're gonna have to do a little bit of work for it. And I think that generally people are content enough with just going and clicking D, and you're not even clicking on the right Democrat for the job half the time. So you feel like you half-assed your job because you didn't vote for a Republican this time, but you're not really doing your due diligence to understand what these candidates work on either. One of the biggest examples of that, for example, is that I have a certain belief about policing as it relates to homelessness, right? I don't believe that homeless people are a community nuisance. I feel like they got a place. They live in our community too, and they ain't got no place to go. That's why they outside in the first place. Like, what the hell do you think they would prefer to be? Right? So
Right.
we're not going to treat them and criminalize them. But I have a lot of Democrats that are trying to toe that line here in Orange County. So they want to be tough on crime, but also acknowledge that there's a homelessness issue. I'm not impressed that you are able to see what I see in the fact that there is a homelessness crisis that needs to be responded to. So I'm glad that's on your list of shit to deal with, but the way you want to deal with it, I don't agree with. So I'm not going to vote for you. I'm going to vote for somebody else who both recognizes that homelessness is a problem and an issue, but also reconciles what's happening with the economy, along with the addiction issue that we have, along with, pathways and programs and things like that that are suitable responses. So it's nuance. What I've just described to you is nuance. And we have to do better. We have to do the middle parts. We have to do the pieces in between and get ourselves politically educated if voting is going to be the option for you. If you're not going to vote, and we have this conversation every year, have a reason why, and be doing something outside of voting and participating if that's going to be your language and your approach. But bottom line, we're going to have to increase what we know, right? So that we're not walking
The
around
knowledge
knowing who
of
our sheriff is. You don't
yeah,
know the name of your sheriff, but you all up in the mix in terms that it can name all 10 candidates on the Republican side and all five for the Democrats. Something's wrong with that.
it's a
But
huge
presidential.
problem. It's a huge problem. So to wrap up this part of today's show, let's be clear. This is what we not doing going in the 2024 election. First, we are not having bullshit conversations about Democrats. I don't care. I don't care. If you ask me what have Democrats done for black people, I'm gonna tell you, shut up talking to me. Move on. I'm sorry. Like I think you asking me that question means you don't want to be cordial. So I'm gonna tell you, shut
Right.
up talking to me. Second, we are not willing to be lectured or talked down to or given advice from celebrities on how we should engage in our political activism and our electoral politics. Nah, we good, especially if you have not done the work for the to understand the needs of the community, why black people vote the way that they do, the issues, the ideologies, the philosophies. If you ain't read what you needed to read, we're not trying to hear from you. I'm sorry. It's as simple as that, right? We'll still listen to you, watch you, everything else, but keep the politics. And then third, don't talk to me about no damn president if you don't know your local elected officials. Don't talk to me about no damn president if you can't tell me your mayor, city council, district attorney, none of all those elected local individuals. If we can't have a conversation about them, I don't want to talk to you about Biden. Don't talk to me about Biden. You shouldn't talk to them about Biden. You shouldn't have a conversation with them either if they cannot talk to you about the politics of your community. It's really that simple, right?
Yep.
It's for too long we've gone by this same script, and we still gonna hear it, right? That's not gonna change. The script is still gonna be the script. We still gonna hear it, right? But what we need to understand is that we are evolving past that. And the only way that we get past that script is by all of us pointing out what the problem is and recognizing that that's not what we are going to do. Moving forward. So, next part of the conversation, before we be on that too long, we got to talk to y'all about this debt ceiling. So for y'all, for those who don't know, right now, government's tied up. The House, the Senate, the president is caught up in whether or not we should raise the debt ceiling, right? We're gonna talk about. Actually, we can go ahead and get into that right now. What the debt ceiling is, so everybody can have an understanding. The debt ceiling was created by Congress in 1917. The debt limit or ceiling sets the maximum amount of outstanding federal debt the U.S. government can incur. So it's pretty much what tells you, it's a credit card limit, essentially.
Right.
It's a credit card limit. In January 2023, the total national debt and debt ceiling both stood at 31.4 trillion. So whenever y'all talk about we owe this many trillions of dollars, we owe, right? This is the conversation that we're having. The U.S. government has run a deficit averaging nearly 1 trillion every year since 2001, meaning it spends that much more money than it receives in taxes and other revenue. To make up the difference, it has to borrow to continue to finance payments that Congress has already authorized. Now, where I want to dig into a little bit of government and understanding that is what we have to know is that our government, the federal government itself, does not have any revenue mainly outside of tax revenue. So every time you hear conservatives talking about cutting taxes but lowering the debt, what they're literally doing is they're saying, hey, we should bring in more revenue, right? Or we should bring in less revenue, but at the same time, let's lower this debt, right? Because the reason why we go into debt is to operate the government and all the services and everything that we need, or that the government needs to function, right? But still, even if it hasn't received all the money that it needs to operate, it can still operate, right? So, to answer the question simply, what would happen if the United States breaches the debt ceiling? So that means that we have the debt ceiling. What would happen if we didn't raise it and then we just busted through it, right?
Oh yeah. By the way, the potential question to be relevant is T-9 days. All right, so make sure you buckle up for this explanation.
Buckle up. Now, hey, and to be honest, this should make y'all feel better, right? Because y'all know everybody be like, I'm debt free. I'm debt free. No, you're not. Because the dollar that you use to be debt free is in debt. Like you know what I'm saying? Do not feel bad about your credit score because and your credit card bills, because the United States keeps a running tab of $1 trillion. All right. So y'all should you should feel good about, you know, your credit card limit. But what would be the consequences if the United States breached the debt ceiling or didn't raise it, and then we still went over that? The debate over the debt ceiling has caused economists such as CFR's Roger Ferguson to consider the once unthinkable prospect of a U.S. default. That is, Washington declaring that it can no longer pay its debts. Some experts say that would herald chaos for U.S. and global economies. Even short of default, hitting the debt ceiling would hamstring the government's ability to finance its operations, including providing for national defense or funding entitlements as Medicare or Social Security. For example, my grandmother, who has a very limited income, who income is situated around Social Security, she wouldn't get a Social Security check. If we breach the debt ceiling, she wouldn't get government employees won't be able to be paid.
Right? Yeah, the first thing that's gonna go is public services and like government state-based agencies and the what they call auxiliary roles that they have. So anything that is not absolutely air quote essential to the function of local government, you'll start to see those things fade away, and that'll happen on a city level, a municipal level, on a state level. You'll start to just see different programs and different positions evaporate because they're not gonna have it in the payroll.
They can't afford it. It goes on to say the potential repercussions of reaching the ceiling include a downgrade by credit rating agencies, increased borrowing costs for businesses and homeowners alike. So that's us, right?
Yeah.
Because anything increased costs that hit our pocket, and a drop off in consumer confidence that could shock the U.S. financial market and tip economy into a recession, which we're already teetering on. Right, we already were teetering on. So, like, now we explaining this because we're gonna talk about the way that they're currently treating this conversation, like the games that they playing with these type of serious consequences. It says Goldman Sachs economists have estimated that a breach of the debt ceiling would immediately halt about 1/10 of the U.S. economic activity. According to center-left think tank Third Way, a breach that leads to a default could cause the loss of 3 million jobs and add $130,000 to the cost of an average 30-year mortgage and raise interest rates enough to increase the national debt by $850 billion. So the debt, not only would the debt continue to go up, but we lose 3 million jobs.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Would it be in this serious, right? With this debt ceiling conversation being this serious, the question. What's up?
The only thing I want to add to the severity of this, and one of the people, because I know for me, if you anything like me, you like, well, we know the defense budget is inflated as shit, so let's, just make some cuts there. Let's start there. Here's the thing: we are also in a very delicate time, geopolitically, and with all the conflict that's happening, a lot of the issues, we have what is called hegemony, right? Hegemony meaning the positionality of the United States as a global superpower. Us, Russia, China, right? All kind of reflect those superpower positionalities. We can't, as a nation, right now appear weak.
Right.
We're already struggling to do that just in terms of our economy and the reverberation it's having globally. But if we start taking money away from our military, that signals that us as a hegemonic power are not nearly as strong, or that we don't have the same investment in our defense techniques and strategies as we would. So it is a question of national security at this point for them to take money away, especially in this urgent moment, right? They would have to slowly siphon money out of the military budget to not cause alarm to other military actors globally, and signal to them that there is some instability with the United States. Like, to be the laughing stock of the country would be to say, ha ha, the United States can't pay its soldiers, right? So there is a very delicate position in the state and our military has been put in to make sure that the optics of what we do with our military have to be pristine and very crisp, so that it doesn't seem like we have any cracks in the structure from that perspective, because we're already very vulnerable in terms of us acting fiscally as actors, right? Our decisions here have already caused international banks to start to shut down. We've already started to have global impacts and influences on the world economy. So we can't start fucking with the military right now, or that can signal some things that can undermine national security. Just want to put that out there, because if you're like me, you like fuck the military and give me that money. Don't work like that.
And to be clear, right, what she was pointing out wasn't advocating for militarism. Is she's arguing why that they not touching that. Like that's one thing they not gonna touch. Yeah, but at the same time, while they playing games with it, right? What happens is, if we default, then we damn sure can't can't rely on any spending for the military, right? Yeah. So this is where it starts. But so this is actually, we can actually get into where it actually really starts getting ridiculous. What's happening right now is that Kevin McCarthy and House Republicans are literally using the increase in the debt ceiling as a bargaining chip for them to, I guess, fight whatever little culture war that they have on entitlements and caring about, actually caring about debt, right? Because what Donald Trump spent so much damn money. 1/3 of all national debt came under the Trump presidency.
My lord.
Right. But at the same time,
him and the Democrats are the ones spending it up.
Right. But at the same time, right now, Republicans are playing a game about raising the debt ceiling until they get what they want. This is how we got it. Like, let's comprehend this hypocrisy. Not to pick sides, who we go like, be a Democrat or be a Republican, to know who we should be against. Period. Not based on party, but how they move, what they do. Right. We got another brother. We got another brother that's actually, what I'm saying, letting us down. There are a lot more black conservatives out here, right? That we've actually that we've been having to come into contact with. We got one that's in the House that more so recently has become more prominent, right? But with the problem, even with these black conservatives, that I'm gonna give y'all some language to use to refer to like people who just run behind Donald Trump, and it's called a sycophant. It's a sycophant, a kiss ass. Right? They don't have a thought of their own. All they do is really run behind a particular individual and then try to get that and try to make sure that they in good graces with that individual. Right?
A buster. Where I'm from, we call them busters.
A buster. Like, that's, I think that's the or I ain't gonna do no Crip Mac impersonation. I ain't trying to do it. I know I had a feeling I had it. Don't do it. I ain't gonna do no gang stuff around here. But let's take let's pull this up here. All right.
While you got the clip going real quick, I want to shout out Jay Universe in the comments. Been rolling with us all night, as well as the rest of y'all who have been talking back to us. We see y'all. ARE Radio, definitely excited to see your comments and gonna have you back and forth or in the mix when we talking about Q. Jay Universe cracked me up when we was talking about political representation. Said I feel like we already appear weak. Or actually, before that, said all I know is my governor is Whitmer, Gretchen Whitmer. I don't even know if I got a mayor. Googling. Right. So yes, it don't matter when you go seek the information. If you listen to this show on Apple Podcast or on Spotify or whatever, pause it and go look and see who your people's is so you know
As soon as you can.
But,
Yeah.
so shout out to the universe. But back to this conversation and talking about the debt ceiling. Play that clip that gives us a little bit more context for what we're dealing with right now.
All right, let's get it.
To respond to something former President Trump said about the debt ceiling in 2019. Take a listen.
I can't imagine anybody ever even thinking of using the debt ceiling as a negotiating wedge.
Why don't you agree with him on this?
Well, first of all, he also said the other day on a rival network that he said that when he was president, and when asked why he wasn't saying it now, he said because he's not president. Trump is always negotiating.
Do you realize how absurd that sounds?
That is not absurd. He's always negotiating, Chuck. Chuck, he's always negotiating. That's what he does. Yeah. That's actually one of the reasons why so many deals for our country worked out to our benefit as compared to his predecessors, both Republican and Democrat, because he's always negotiating.
Do you realize how partisan that sounds?
That's not a partisan statement.
What is good for me is not for thee.
Listen,
he's basically saying when I'm president,
right.
There's no negotiating on this. But hey, when somebody else is president, screw him.
So
his name, and unless I want to take a minute because we need to be able to recognize some of these fools. And I remember this Representative Donalds, right? What's his first name?
Let me. I'm putting it.
Byron Donalds.
Byron, yes, Byron Donalds is his name. He don't make me nervous, but he kind of throws me off as that. Remember we used to be like, we'd be like, they all got that look. Black conservatives all got that. All
look,
got that.
You can always tell by the hair. You can always tell by the hair. This nigga got the edge up.
Got that crisp edge up.
He got the beard connecting everything. You know what I'm saying? Got a nice little smile. And behind all of that, he be on a whole bunch of bullshit, y'all. I done seen him in a couple different conversations. Being on some foolery. So don't fall for it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Pay more attention to him. Who they parading around these days. He represents Florida's 19th congressional district. So, I mean, that tells you a lot of what you need to know.
Tells you a lot.
He is running the lead in charge. He's the one telling them, we don't need to be talking about no CRT in no classroom. We don't need to be part of them conversations, right? This is why the bullshit look like it looks. Because of Byron.
Because of people like Byron Donalds, yep. Put his name out there, Byron Donalds. He's not an ally. All skin folk ain't kinfolk. All skin folk ain't kinfolk.
Playing games, right? Like he is with this whole kind of finagling of Donald Trump's perspective on the debt ceiling being a bargaining chip or a negotiating chip or not. In some instances it can be, in other instances it shouldn't be. And another example of these conservative contradictions.
But like, how are we doing politics in 2023? Like, you feel me? Like how, like you know how we looking the past, like look at history and be like, damn, how did all of these people like be okay with this? Like how could, like, why are we reading about this instance in history instead of hearing about a bunch of people that came together and said, nah, this ain't okay, right? And what makes it even more frustrating, and this is why we start in the election season today, right? This is the political plug, Toya G, chop up show, election season kickoff. We doing it right now. Niggas like Byron Donald, niggas like Tim Scott, ops, right? Period. Get them up out of here. I don't care about party. Any politician is gonna get up and tell you that the nigga I'm running behind, whatever he say goes. If he say one thing and tomorrow he say something different, because I kiss his ass, he right regardless. Democrat or Republican, fuck him. We don't need that type of politics. We don't need those types of people. Right? Because it's again, they are more willing to run behind Donald Trump and kiss his ass than actually look like they have any like shred of integrity. That's a problem. Yes, we don't live in Florida, right? So we're not necessarily impacted as much. But like this is the representation of the black conservative that is justified for black people to be conservatives. But I couldn't run behind conservatism if the people who had that conservative label was this much of kiss asses who couldn't think for
You know what I'm
themselves.
saying? And that's what I think under the guise of freedom and coming out of the shadows, they become some of the worst examples of what other, I'm sorry, but black conservatives around the country are going to end up doing, because they're going to link and hitch their wagon onto some bullshit that's going to be the beginning pieces of the crumbling of what's happening in their state. And the only explanation of it is going to be the party has won again, and their tantalization of black conservatives that are able to feed into their agenda to make their agenda seem more appealing to a demographic it does not appeal to. It is all optics. It is all bullshit. It is cap. Okay? Not persuaded, not moved by it, but what it does is give a whole bunch of people who need to sit down and shut up the righteous indignation and start sliding their asses into some of these races and giving white people a safe way to say, look, I'm not anti-black, I voted for the black guy. And it'd be somebody on some bullshit like this. They are not critical thinkers. We cannot afford to let these conservative black people, and this is bad because, again, I don't think that black people are a monolith. So I want to be clear so that I don't get misconstrued or misunderstood. If you are a black conservative, sure, but none of your black conservative ideas are unique. They're not unique. They're not special. They're not revolutionary. They don't change shit. They just fall right back into the white conservative game plan that has undermined our interests for years. So no, I'm not with those black conservatives, and don't think you should catch any steam or attract anybody else who is seeing what the hell you're doing when your interest completely undermines the interests of black people and the intersections that they have in this country. Because if it's not black people, you're dealing with queer folk and you antagonizing them. And you know who's also queer? Black people, right? So you're messing with women and the politics and the ways that they get to deal with their body. But you know the crazy thing about women, a lot of them be black, right? So again, these agendas you participating in, directly and indirectly, that
It's
results.
impacting
You
black
can't afford
people.
to fire. Not interested in that at all.
And that's why, and it's like when people trying to figure out, well, how should we think about voting, right? Like, how should we, shit like this, right? We know that. Let's go back to it. What would be what is the impact directly on us when it comes to this type of shit? Well, like we said, what it say? 3 million jobs lost.
Yeah.
And they supposed to be the job creators, but y'all playing a game with the debt ceiling, even after the nigga y'all run behind straight up said, because when Donald and what he's referring to is Donald Trump did a CNN town hall where they asked him right about the debt ceiling, and they was like, and Donald Trump said conservatives shouldn't cave, conservatives should fight on the debt ceiling, and they was like, well, Mr. Trump, you said this back in the day. I can't see anybody. And then his response was literally say, well, I was the president then, I ain't the president now. So you can say whatever you want, right? We can't vote for people like this and think that we live in what's called an intelligent country, right? Like a civil society. Like we literally voting for people who get up and say, it don't matter what I say, right? Just, vote for me because I believe in what you believe. That's the foolishness.
It's wicked.
That's the foolishness. And that's the foolishness we fall into when we play in the partisan politics. Right now, we're gonna keep y'all more updated about the debt ceiling, but we at least wanted y'all to know what's going on with the debt ceiling, what's the current conversation with the debt ceiling, and the foolishness that's happening with it right now.
Outside of us keeping y'all updated on what the June 1st is a very important day. Right? The thing about what's been happening is Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen, has been signaling, like literally sending emails and messages to members of the House and the Senate for really the House, begging them to make decisions and make the right decisions about increasing the debt limit because of the horrible and unprecedented implications it's going to have on communities around this country, right? And people around this country. They ain't been listening, they ain't been dealing with it. But here's the thing about how this has to work. They need at least 72 hours once the bill has been crafted with the language that they wanted for it to exist, for all of the people voting, all the Congress people to be able to read it, to understand it, to digest it, to think about their constituencies, their bases, and how it meets their needs. Then after they read that whole, they got to come back and negotiate that shit. They got to make sure they're on the same page about what's in and what's not, and have debates and potentially filibusters around that bullshit until they get on the same page about the language. And then they have to vote for it, and then it has to be implemented by that deadline. So it's a very fragile amount of time with an unpredictable potential end. And if there can be no agreement and they can't even get to the table to start having conversations about this shit now, we're gonna run out of time, even if they do try to throw something out there by the end of this week. So this is a day by day time sensitive thing. So don't even wait for us to come back and talk to y'all about it, because y'all need to figure it out. One last thing I'll say about this before we go to our last chop and be done with our last piece of our conversation to be done for the night is you might be wondering, well, if it's such a big deal, why the president can't just jump in? Why you can't just evoke the 14th Amendment and go ahead and fix it that way? Because if the debt ceiling is so big, he's the president, he can do whatever. Here's the thing about the 14th Amendment. Whenever you sign or use executive order, keep in mind, and let's look at the student loan debt, right, that we were supposed to get fixed, that was kind of pushed through executive order. What happens? Then
They can
they can
sue.
just close that shit up in court. They can sue,
They can sue.
and then it gets caught up in court, and now we're not moving forward at all. Y'all remember last time we heard anything about getting anything off our student loans? That shit is held up in court right now. They haven't figured it out, and they are potentially going to win that court battle because now there's more time for more people to sift through it and be a part of blocking it and shit like that. So that's why the president can't just come in and fix it. It has to be done and determined through these channels, or we end up going nowhere fast in the same terrible, dire straits of situations we explained above. So pay attention to what's happening by June the 1, because we could be very much talking to y'all from a recession in about a month. I thought about today, like, bro, I could turn 34 in a recession. Like, what type of shit is this? This is kind of
Nonsense.
let's think
So this
about it.
so this last chop we getting into really is just like a quick FYI, just kind of put y'all up on game. Donnell and actually put us up on game. Shout out to Donnell in the chat. Put us up on game on this issue, but this is definitely something y'all should know about as well, and something we'll be digging more into in the coming weeks as more information comes out. But right now, what's happening is Pro Republica, which is the website that actually broke down, or the group, Watchdog group, that broke down what was going on with what's his name, Clarence Thomas, and exposed a lot of his wrongdoings, have recently reported that Rep. James Clyburn has actually been working against the interest of his Democratic colleagues in order to make sure he maintains his own power. What this is speaking to, it is a ProPublica kind of got a hold of some information about a secret meeting back in 2021 between the Chief of Staff of South Carolina's Senate Judiciary Committee, Dalton Tresvant, and a key aide to Clyburn, Rep. Clyburn in South Carolina. What this had to do with is, y'all see this map here. This is a map that the Democrat Jim Clyburn actually worked with conservatives to put together, that actually hindered the ability for black voters, right? He gerrymandered. He gerrymandered in a way that hindered the. Go ahead.
Well, no.
Oh,
finish the sentence.
what that does is that hinders the electoral power of black communities, because it splits them up. It divides them into like larger populations of black people end up getting weirdly divided and split up into smaller districts, so to where that concentrated electoral power ends up getting broke off into other places. The accusation, because we're saying allegedly right now, because Jim Clyburn is vehemently denying the accusations, but what's being said is that he worked with Republicans to gerrymander to make sure that he was able to maintain his seat. What was you about to point out, Toya?
That largely that it was a matter of personal interest, and what this does is sets up an issue because he's like 82 years old. Another example of potentially the older generations trying to hold on to power so much so that it undermines the interests of their entire party or of the people that their decisions affect. But he's been in his position as a representative since like the 90s, like I want to say like 92. And as just a literal move of self-preservation, largely because he's on, I think, Biden's 2024. He's like a co-director of the re-election committee. He's like filling in some roles and shit like that. He didn't want to lose his position as a representative. And so again, in bed with people have no interest. And now these types of decisions, these type of gerrymandering through redistricting has the ability to affect generations now, because the tug and pull, the push and pull of what this districting looks like, especially in a time of voter exclusion, means that he is potentially setting up worlds where, because what happened was all the black people are in his district and a lot of affluent white people are out of it, then now they've taken their voting power and can put all their eggs in the basket to vote for all affluent white South Carolinian representatives. It's very important to understand he is the only black Democratic representative out of that entire state, right? The state of South Carolina is 68% white, right? So his district literally houses all of the black people, which means there is no stratification of any of that black collective power or the type of dynamic candidacies that can come out of it and challenge some of these seats over the next year, how many ever years to come, right? So these types of decisions have, again, decades worth, generational worth implications on the decisions that are made in states like South Carolina.
And it's pretty much to back up what Toya's saying, I keep saying pro-Republica, but ProPublica points out in a report that the resulting map finalized in January 2022 made Clyburn's lock on power stronger than it might have been otherwise. A House representative seat that Democrats had held as recently as 2018 will become even more solid for the incumbent Republican. This came at a cost. Democrats now have virtually no shot of winning any congressional seat in South Carolina other than Clyburn's state political leaders on both sides of the aisle say. So now pretty much South Carolina has a black seat, a black district. It's official. It's not even, now it's not a question of, like black people around the state. No, you pretty much been hamstrung. Like your electoral power, if you're a black person, has been severely limited if you don't live in Clyburn's district. You're not going to be able to vote for a black person, let alone a Democrat, but definitely not a black person, right? In the state of South Carolina, because Clyburn allegedly wanted to make sure that his seat, his position was locked in. We need term limits. We gotta have them. I mean, because this is what happens when you don't. You have politicians that are willing to work, to do things to make sure that they stay in power for as long as they have. We're not going to keep y'all too much longer. We just want to touch on some more parts of this, but we're going to, as more information comes in, we definitely going to have that information available. ProPublica points out also that as others attacked the Republican redistricting as an illegal racial gerrymandering, which it is, Clyburn said nothing publicly. His role throughout the redistricting process has remained out of the public view, and he has denied any involvement in state legislative decisions. And while it's been clear that Clyburn has been a key participant in past state redistricting, the extent of his role in 2021 negotiations has not been previously examined. This account draws on public records, hundreds of pages of legal filings, and interviews with dozens of South Carolina lawmakers and political experts from both sides. Now, the last thing I want to point out, as we start to wrap this up and get final thoughts on Clyburn's allegedly crooked ass, South Carolina's 2021 redistricting. Right. But so, what I want to point out is that South Carolina's 2021 redistricting is now being challenged in federal courts by the NAACP. The organization contends that Republicans deliberately moved black voters in the Clyburn's district to solidify their party's hold on the neighboring swing district, the first district, right? So what Clyburn was allegedly involved in now got to go to court because it's that obvious. It's literally that obvious that the way that Republicans drew up that district was to limit the electoral power. Now, that what they meant by that swing district, the first, that meant that the way that district was originally set up, that first district was originally set up, that it was like split, right? You had black people and Democrats as well as whites and conservatives in that first district. What they've done to that first district has now made it to where those black people are in Clyburn's district, right? They split up that district to a degree to where black people are no longer are like pretty much no longer have any electoral influence in the first district in South Carolina. So That's where we at right now with Jim Clyburn. Now, again, all of this is alleged, right? It's more
Yeah.
information. It's more information that's supposed to come out, right? But until it does, these accusations, they don't look good. They don't look
At
good.
all. I mean, and you already old, bro, and you coming off as super untrustworthy. You about to lose the same black people who you tried to gather together to rally around to vote for you. I would hope. I don't really know about the. I mean, it's a red state. You know what I'm saying? So the voting tendencies already are uphill battle, but now you have created a world where people find out that you've been playing patty cake with them. They're not finna be trying to support your ass to continue the job that you took up space to take in the first place. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, hey, stupid game, stupid prizes, especially if what seems to be true comes out as actually so.
So, with that being said, we definitely appreciate y'all joining us. I know we kind of caught y'all by surprise. I look forward to everybody that's able to join the conversation, both on the podcast and on the playback. What's up, Toya?
Hey, just like Donnell did, sliding us that story and that conversation that we end up taking and running with, please do the same thing. Go follow us on IG right now so that you can be dropping different articles, different conversations that you feel like are interesting that we can take a look at. Because, I mean, put stuff on our radar. We don't know about everything, but we definitely want to talk about stuff y'all care about too. So do that. Go and follow us right now at the Chop Up Show, at the Chop Up Show, the Chop Up Show. So you can stay connected at the Political Plug, at Toya G, ToyuHgee. Tap in with us.
Man, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and let y'all call it a night. We're going to get it in. We will see y'all next week. Peace.
Peace.